For decades, we've imagined the next great conflict starting with a missile launch, or maybe the roar of jet engines. But a very different kind of threat is now occupying the minds of strategists in capitals across the West. It's a silent war, fought in total darkness, miles beneath the surface of the ocean, a hidden battlefield that, it turns out, underpins our entire modern world.
Just imagine for a moment waking up to a world that's gone quiet, a world without connection. Your phone has no signal. Your computer can't get online. You try to pay for something, your card is declined. The ATM is offline. The lights might still be on, but the very nervous system of modern society has been severed. This isn't just some sci-fi scenario. It's a very real vulnerability right at the heart of our global system.
And this isn't just a theory. The threat is very much on the radar. On December 8th, 2025, the British government announced a major new defense initiative, something called the Atlantic Bastion. Now, this wasn't a random move. It was a direct response to a pattern of, well, let's call it suspicious activity. Specifically, Russian vessels lingering in very strange ways directly over critical subsea infrastructure in the Irish Sea. So, in this analysis, we're going to deconstruct this undersea conflict. We'll start by tearing down the myth of the cloud and look at the physical reality of the internet. Then we'll profile the state-level hunters operating in the deep, and we'll analyze the West's new strategic response, this Atlantic Bastion. And finally, we'll get into the staggering economic consequences of an attack, and what signals intelligence analysts are watching for right now. To really understand the nature of this threat, we have to start by getting rid of a very common misconception. We all talk about the cloud, but the internet's functionality has almost nothing to do with that ethereal, weightless concept. The truth about how our data moves around the world is, well, it's pretty stark. We see satellite constellations like Starlink, and we think that's how it all works. But in reality, satellites handle less than 1% of all global data traffic. The other 99%, and I mean everything, your emails, military commands, trillions of dollars in financial transactions, it's all transmitted through a physical network of fiber-optic cables just lying on the ocean floor. And this is where the core vulnerability is exposed. These cables that form the literal backbone of the global economy, they aren't some massive armored tunnels. For most of their journey across the ocean, they're no thicker than a regular garden hose. And inside, the glass fibers that carry all that data, they're as thin and as fragile as a single human hair. So, the obvious question is, who would have both the motive and the incredibly advanced means to target something like this? This isn't the work of pirates or terrorists. The threat that has captured NATO's full attention is a sophisticated, state-level capability, engineered for one very specific purpose. The primary surface vessel on the intelligence community's watch list is a ship called the Yantar. Now, its official designation is an oceanographic research vessel. It's operated by Russia's main Directorate of Deep Sea Research, or GUZHI, but it's safe to say its true purpose has very little to do with studying marine life. You see, the Yantar is basically a mothership. It carries and deploys deep-sea submersibles that can operate at insane depths, down to 6,000 meters. And these aren't just for looking around. They're fitted with robotic arms designed to do one of two things. Either sever a cable completely or, even more sinister, install a tap to siphon off intelligence. And its movements aren't secret. It's been publicly tracked, showing a very clear pattern of just loitering right on top of the internet's most critical choke points. But as concerning as the Yantar is, the evidence suggests it's really just a reconnaissance asset. It's the Scout. The primary strategic platform, the real heavy hitter, is a submarine called the Belgorod. When it was launched, it became the longest submarine ever built. And that extra length isn't for torpedoes. It was added for a highly specialized mission. The Belgorod's main job is to act as a mothership for an even more clandestine asset, a nuclear-powered, deep-diving submarine known as the Losherik. The Losherik can actually detach from the Belgorod, descend to the seabed, and just sit there. It can wait on the ocean floor for weeks at a time, awaiting commands, all while being effectively impossible to detect. So the deep fear inside Western intelligence agencies isn't just about a random cable cut here or there. All the evidence points to a much bigger, much more patient strategic goal, meticulously mapping the entire subsea network. Why? To enable a coordinated, simultaneous strike, an attack that could, in the opening moments of a conflict, completely decapitate Western communications and command and control. So how in the world do you defend a network of over 700,000 miles of cable lying on the pitch-black ocean floor?
Sending warships out to patrol that vast an area is completely impractical. This kind of challenge, it requires a whole new way of thinking about defense. And that is the whole point of the Atlantic Bastion. The strategy is shifting from active patrolling to passive sensing. What NATO is doing is deploying a massive network of autonomous underwater drones and fixed sensors on the seabed. The best way to think about it isn't as a fence, but as a giant sophisticated burglar alarm for the entire Atlantic seabed. Now, the main goal here isn't necessarily to stop an attack while it's happening, it's about something else: attribution. The process has 3 steps. First, the network of sensors and drones senses a hostile signature. Second, an immediate encrypted alert goes straight to NATO command. And third, and this is the crucial part, the hostile action itself is recorded, providing crystal clear, indisputable evidence of who did it. This simple strategy is designed to be a complete game changer. An adversary can no longer cut a cable and then just shrug and blame it on a fishing trawler or a convenient underwater earthquake. With undeniable proof, a gray zone incident, one of those acts of covert aggression, is instantly transformed into a clear, unambiguous act of war. Plausible deniability is completely taken off the table.
So what would the consequences actually be? In a scenario where this invisible war escalates and those cables are successfully cut, the effects on the global economy and on all of our lives would be immediate, and they would be catastrophic.
The first and most immediate shock would be financial. The SWIFT banking system, the network that handles the vast majority of international financial transfers, runs entirely on this subsea network. We are talking about over $10 trillion in value moving through those cables every single day. If you sever the links between, say, London and New York, that flow of money stops. Liquidity would evaporate, and markets would almost certainly freeze or crash. For the rest of us, the internet would become essentially unusable. All that data from the fiber-optic network would try to reroute through that tiny 1% capacity offered by satellites. It would create a massive data traffic jam, a severe satellite bottleneck. All available bandwidth would be immediately prioritized for essential military and government communications, leaving the public internet slowed to a crawl. You'd have trouble loading even a basic web page. And fixing the damage wouldn't be a quick job. In peacetime, a specialized cable-laying ship can mend a break in a few days. But during a conflict, these ships are slow. They're highly visible. They would become incredibly vulnerable targets out in the open ocean. A repair that normally takes a few days could suddenly be delayed for months, if it could even be attempted at all. This threat, as we've said, isn't just theoretical. It is an active concern. So the question becomes, what are the warning signs of an imminent attack? Right now, intelligence analysts are constantly sifting through the noise of global maritime traffic, looking for very specific signals. They're focused on 3 key indicators. First, when those so-called research vessels, like the Yantar, suddenly switch off their public tracking transponders when they're near a critical cable hub. That suggests they're getting into position for an operation. Second, a sudden spike in GPS jamming in the North Atlantic, which could be an attempt to blind both commercial and military tracking systems. And third, a more subtle economic clue. If insurance premiums for subsea cable operators suddenly skyrocket, it could mean that risk analysts in the private sector have intelligence that the threat level has just gone way up. And this all perfectly frames the new reality of 21st century conflict. The first shot of the next war might not be a missile streaking across the sky on the evening news. It might just be that little spinning, buffering icon on your own screen. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the internet, this thing that feels so abstract and infinite, is in reality a physical and deeply fragile system. And that forces us to ask a final, critical question. Knowing that this hidden battlefield exists on the cold, dark floor of the ocean, how must we completely reevaluate our understanding of global security?